"I saw you with her," she said, and buttered her toast. Rafe, Duke of Vexmoor, set down his cup so hard the coffee leapt over the rim and spread a dark stain across the white cloth. Across the length of the breakfast table, his wife did not look up. Cassandra dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin, considered the marmalade, and decided against it, and the morning light poured through the tall east windows as though nothing at all had been said. "You saw me," he repeated. His voice, which had frozen out cabinet ministers and cowed his own steward for 11 years, came out oddly thin. "In the north drawing-room, yesterday at a little past 4. She lifted her tea. "She had her hand upon your sleeve and you were leaning close and you were both speaking very low. I confess I did not linger to hear the particulars. It seemed an intrusion." He waited for the tears. He had braced in the half-second between the words and the dropped cup for the whole terrible machinery of a wronged wife, the trembling lip, the raised voice, the flight from the room, the door that slams and then the muffled weeping behind it that a man must stand outside of, helpless and guilty and undone. He had seen his father endure it. He had sworn, in the cold way of a young man who has decided everything, never to marry a woman who could reduce him to standing outside a door. He had married Cassandra Merrick precisely because she was not that woman. She was the daughter of a country baron of no particular consequence, 23, sensible, with a plain-spoken calm that had struck him at their first meeting as a kind of mercy. He had wanted a duchess who would run his houses, sit at his table, and demand nothing of his heart, which he had long ago decided was not a serviceable organ and best left unbothered. She had suited. He had told himself so 100 times in the 6 months of their marriage, when he noticed her too much and disliked noticing. Now she buttered a second piece of toast. "You are not going to ask me," he said slowly, "who she was. I did not suppose it my business to interrogate you at breakfast." Cassandra glanced at the ruined cloth, then rang the small bell at her elbow. A footman appeared, took in the spreading stain with a well-trained absence of expression and laid a clean napkin over it. "Thank you, Peter. His Grace has had a small mishap." Rafe stared at her. She was, he realized, entirely at her ease. Her color had not risen. Her hands did not shake. She ate her toast as a woman eats toast on an ordinary Tuesday, and this composure, in a moment that ought by every law of nature to have broken her, was so far outside his understanding of what women did that he could not for the life of him find the ground beneath his feet. "You are angry," he tried. "I am eating my breakfast," Cassandra said. "You may join me if you can be trusted with a cup." He did not join her. He rose and made her a stiff bow that she acknowledged without looking up, and left the room, and spent the whole of the morning being unable to think of anything else. The woman in the north drawing-room had been Miss Honora Fitch, and there was nothing whatever in it, and this was the maddening part. She was the daughter of his late friend Colonel Fitch, dead a year at a card table with debts enough to sink his family. Rafe had been quietly paying the girl's school fees, and had that afternoon been persuading her, against her pride, to accept a further sum so that her younger sisters might not be turned out of their cottage. She had gripped his sleeve and wept a little from gratitude and shame, and he had leaned close and told her low that Colonel Fitch had once carried him half a mile through a river with a ball in his shoulder, and that no daughter of that man would want while Vexmoor stood. That was all. It was, if anything, the single most creditable thing he had done that month. He had meant to tell no one. He had a horror of gratitude and a deeper horror of being thought kind. And so he had said nothing to his wife, and his wife had seen the tableau through an open door and drawn the ancient conclusion and had chosen, this was the thing he could not get past, to say nothing either, until she said it over toast calmly, as one remarks upon the weather. He found himself, at 11, walking the long gallery for no reason. At 1:30 he was in the library not reading. At noon he stood at the window of his study and watched Cassandra cross the terrace below with a basket over her arm, going out to the walled garden as she did every fine day, unhurried, her gray gown plain against the box hedges, and he was seized by an emotion so unfamiliar that it took him some moments to name it. He was afraid she did not care. It was, he saw with a kind of horror, the only explanation that fit the facts. A woman who loved her husband would rage or weep or accuse. A woman who was indifferent to him would butter her toast. He had built his whole marriage upon the sensible foundation of a wife who would demand nothing of his heart, and it had not once occurred to him, in all his careful planning, that a heart which demands nothing might also give nothing, and that he might one day stand at a window desperate to know whether the woman crossing the terrace thought of him at all. He went out to the walled garden. She was cutting the late roses, laying them in the basket with the stems all one way. She did not startle when his shadow fell across the path. "You will want to know," he said, and stopped, because he did not know how to begin, and he had never in his life not known how to begin. "About the north drawing-room," Cassandra snipped a stem. "You need tell me nothing, your grace. A man's affairs are his own." "They are not affairs, it is not." He drew a breath. The word affairs in her cool mouth had struck him like a slap precisely because she had said it without heat. "The lady is Miss Fitch. Her father saved my life in Spain and died leaving her nothing. I have been paying her school fees. Yesterday I persuaded her to let me keep the roof over her sisters. She took my sleeve to thank me. That is the whole of it." Cassandra's shears paused. For the first time that day she looked fully at him, and there was something in her gray eyes he could not read, which unsettled him more than tears would have. "Why did you not tell me," she said, "before I saw it?" "Because I do not." He stopped again. "I do not care to be thought kind. It is a weakness people trade upon." "I see." She resumed her cutting, and he felt her withdrawing again into that terrible calm, and something in him rebelled against it as a drowning man rebels against water. "You were not going to say anything," he said. "You would have carried it, a husband with a woman's hand on his sleeve, you would have carried it in silence and buttered your toast every morning forever, and let me think you did not." He heard his own voice climbing and mastered it. "Why?" Cassandra laid down the shears. "'Cause I married a man who told me plainly at our betrothal that he wished a wife who would demand nothing of his heart. She said it without reproach, which was worse than reproach. I have tried to be that wife. It seemed the least I could do, having accepted the bargain with my eyes open. And a wife who demands nothing does not make scenes. She does not weep over toast. If her husband has taken a mistress, she is dignified about it, and she runs his houses beautifully, and she does not embarrass him. That was the arrangement, your grace. I have been keeping my half of it." Rafe felt the whole edifice of his careful marriage shift beneath him. "I did not mean," he said, "that you should not." He could not finish it because he had meant exactly that, and they both knew it. "You meant what you said." Cassandra picked up a rose and turned it in her fingers, and a thorn caught her thumb and a bead of red welled, and she looked at it as though from a great distance. "I did not mind at first. I thought I should be quite content to be useful and let the rest alone. But it is a curious thing, marriage. One sits across a table from a man every morning for 6 months, and watches him be short with his steward and gentle with his old dogs, and one begins, against all sense, to—" She stopped. Her calm did not break, but it thinned, and for one instant he saw straight through it to what lay behind, and it was not indifference at all. "I found I did mind, after all. When I saw her hand upon your sleeve, I minded a great deal. And because I had promised to demand nothing, the only dignity left to me was to say it as though I did not." She pressed the napkin to her thumb. "So I buttered my toast," she said. "It was the bravest thing I have ever done, and you dropped your cup, which was almost worth it." For 11 years Rafe, Duke of Vexmoor, had prided himself on being a man whom nothing could move. He discovered, standing among the late roses with a bead of his wife's blood on a white napkin, that he had been wrong about that, as he had been wrong about very nearly everything he had decided at 23. He took her hand, the wounded one, and pressed the napkin himself, and she let him, watching his bent head with those unreadable eyes. "I made a foolish bargain," he said. I offered you the one thing I possessed that was worth nothing and kept back the only thing that was worth anything and called it prudence. I have watched you cross that terrace every day for 6 months and told myself I did not notice. I noticed. I have noticed nothing else." He lifted his head. "I do not want a wife who demands nothing. I find I want a wife who would throw the toast at me. I find I want you to mind." "I do mind," Cassandra said. Her voice was not quite steady now, and he found, to his astonishment, that the sound of its steadying and failing was dearer to him than all her composure had been. "I mind terribly. I have minded for months. I only did not know what to do with a thing there was no room in the bargain for." "Tear up the bargain," Rafe said. "I am tearing up mine." She looked at him a long moment. Then something moved in her face, not the collapse he had once dreaded, but the opposite of it, a warmth breaking through the calm like sun through the east windows, and she said, with the ghost of that dry wit that had first, he now understood, undone him, "You will have to buy Miss Fitch's sisters a better cottage. I will not have my husband's charities done in half measures. If we are to be known for anything, we shall be known for that." "We," he said, and the word sat strangely and wonderfully in his mouth. "We," she agreed. He did the accounts differently after that. He set a sum on the Fitch girls that made his man of business raise an eyebrow, and told him to raise the other one as well, and let it be thought whatever it liked. He learned, over the following weeks, that his wife's calm was not indifference but a discipline, a thing she had built to survive the bargain he had offered, and that beneath it ran a current of feeling as strong and as warm as any he had ever encountered, and that it had been running toward him the whole time while he stood at windows and told himself he did not notice. He began to notice on purpose. He learned the way she tipped her head when she was about to say something dry, so that he might brace for it and fail too, every time. He learned that she read history at night and argued with the authors in the margins, and he took to reading the same volumes after her only to find her verdicts, and to disagree with them at breakfast merely to watch her defend them. He learned that she had never in her life been asked what she wanted, and he made a study of asking, and of the small startled pleasure it gave her each time, as though the question itself were a gift. And she, for her part, stopped keeping her half of a bargain that no longer existed. She minded openly now. She told him plainly when he was cold, and plainly when he was kind, and would not let him hide behind the horror of being thought good. She praised his gentleness with the old dogs until he was forced to own it. She threw nothing at him. In the end, she was too fond of the porcelain, but she told him one morning, buttering her toast, that if she ever again saw a strange woman's hand upon his sleeve, she would want a full accounting before the second slice. And he laughed, which he had almost forgotten how to do, and reached across the length of the table for her hand. Miss Fitch married a curate 2 years on, from a cottage with a new roof, and a portion the whole county wondered at, and named her first daughter Cassandra, and neither the Duke nor the Duchess ever told anyone why. On the morning of their first anniversary, Rafe came down to find the breakfast table laid and his wife already at it, and he stopped in the doorway a moment simply to look at her. The plain gray gown he loved better than any silk, the tipped head, the light from the east windows lying along her hair. She glanced up and caught him looking, and did not pretend not to see, which was the whole of the difference between the man he had been and the man she had made of him. "You are staring, your grace," she said. "I am," he said, and crossed the room, and did not sit at the far end where the bargain had once seated him, but drew a chair close beside her and stayed. "I intend to go on staring. I have a year of it to make up, and I mean to be thorough." Cassandra passed him the toast. Her hand, when he took it, did not shake at all, but she let him keep it, warm and steady in his, all through breakfast, and that he had learned was the truest thing she knew how to say. He held on and did not let go, and the coffee for once stayed in its cup.